Good afternoon, both. How are we?
Yeah, I'm fine.
Pete, how are you?
A little bit tired from last night.
Yeah,
but
tired.
surviving.
I think tired is the word. As last time I saw you on this stage, we just smashed a bottle of red wine, hadn't we?
Yeah. I was trying to. What were we playing charades, weren't we?
We were doing charades. Yeah, it got
was
a bit
the devil.
messy. You were doing the devil. I
And
did
he
not understand.
didn't get it.
I didn't know what was going on, to be honest. So I left Pete dancing around stage, and a bottle of red wine was smashed. Anyway, let's take a look at both of you in action. Starting first with Marcel Kittel.
Centre of the road, the other German, but no chance once again.
Bonifacio right on his wheel, and just a fraction.
On Dubai, he is back in business. The big showdown happened.
Yeah, round of applause. There we go. Just a few wins to your name. And actually, I noted a few there from the Dubai tour, now UAE tour, of course. And I think that was probably one of the last times we saw each other was out there. The year that you got, there was a sandstorm through the desert, and you got punched in the face by another rider, and it cut the glasses dug into your eye and cut your eye. Do you remember?
Yeah, of course I remember. I think it was on my right side. Something. Yeah, but, we were fighting for positions in a crosswind, and another rider just lost his cool and thought it would be easy to punch me, but nah. It was not a nice action.
The good old days.
They threw him out of the race. So
yeah, they did. Yeah, it was really dramatic. Pete, we'll take a look at some of your best bits now.
Not as many as you.
Well, there we go. How do you feel looking back on that?
It's always quite strange to look back on. Yeah. It feels like I don't know. You're almost watching a different person in a way. Yeah, mixed emotions. It's I guess proud when you see the wins and stuff, but it's still strange not being there in a way.
Yeah, absolutely. And we're going to come on to that as well. We're talking about youth prodigies who turn pro and turn pro fast, so we're going to take it back. Can you both recount the moment that you realised, I have what it takes to go pro?
Yes, I can. That was in 2011, so my first professional season. I became pro. So you don't actually become pro on the 1st January of 2011. It starts 2-3 months before, when you get to meet all your new teammates in October during team meeting, and then you have the first training camps, and they explain everything to you, and they give you an introduction on what your race program might be. And my season started with the Tour de Langkawi in Malaysia in January 2011, and I thought, yeah, I'm just this guy who's responsible for doing lead-outs for our team sprinter back then, and it turned out to be the race where I would get my first professional win in a sprint. So I immediately turned from being only someone who helps a domestique to someone who actually gets responsibility for team victories, and I automatically also got the confidence that I can win even on professional level. So that was a really nice feeling.
And Pete, for you?
So different. I remember, I think it was after the Baby Giro 2009, when I was third overall. I signed for Sky the following year, but completely the opposite. The first year was just, I couldn't even be in position, never mind win a race, and I was for the first 2-3 years, I honestly believed that I'd never win a professional race, and just spent 3 years trying to learn the craft and get stronger and get better. Slightly different to Marcel, but I just remember it being such a big jump up from under 23, and the speed on the climbs, probably the fighting for position was the biggest change for me to get used to, because it wasn't, when you're in an under 23 race, it's just there's not the team dynamics, there's the control isn't the same, and just getting used to that style of racing and how teams work, and that was probably the biggest challenge, I guess.
And Marcel, your first year, obviously in comparison to what Pete's just said there, was extraordinary, wasn't it? What was that like, just suddenly being thrust into the limelight as this revelation, this sprinter to watch, and then being tasked with the pressure to win, to deliver?
Yeah, it was first of all nothing that I expected from my first season as a professional. I honestly thought when I turned professional, I had this one team that would actually would like to work with me. That was Shimano back then. It's now Team DSM. And they offered me a contract, and that was my only chance to try and go and see the professional world and see how it would work for me, how good I will be in that world. And so I thought, okay, I'll just do my job, I'll just give my best, and if it's over after 2 years, that's it. And then I come in and I have such a crazy start with immediate success and the trust of the team. We had an incredible time there also as teammates. It was really, really nice. And I finished this season with, I think, 17 victories, which included not only...
Pete's
Sorry.
face to me then. It is unbelievable.
No, but I think that also says that it's very special and very unique. And I was, I think, one of the most successful neo-pros in general in the sport. And with victories and Grand Tours already in that year, in the Vuelta with a stage victory there and on World Tour level before that. For a young person, it's really a lot that you also have to process, and that was a crazy experience.
Yeah, and I remember you winning the time trial. Was it Junior Worlds? Twice.
Junior Worlds twice, yeah.
Yeah, and then you're a sprinter.
Yeah,
and I was just like, what is going on?
It sounds... I mean, I've always been fast, and how I actually really came into the sport at the beginning, and when I was 12, 13, 14 years old, the first success I had was already in sprinting. And we did small local races where I would ride with my friends of our club together, and we would work each other, work for me. I would be the guy who has to sprint at the end. I would always win. And suddenly somewhere also along the way I discovered that I'm good in time trial. I had success there. But it was not enough, and that you have to be clear about that as well, not enough for professional level to be successful in the individual time trial there.
Fabian Cancellara just over there listening intently on, you could have been his big rival. Being in the limelight, it is a challenge, isn't it, at any age? But especially I think when you're a young person and you're coming through a system, coming out of teenhood, coming into your early 20s, you probably don't quite even know yourself yet, and suddenly you're tasked with being one of the greatest sprinters in the world, Pete, for you being in Team Sky, riding the Tour de France. What was it like for both of you, and how did you cope?
I actually thought about that a lot, because I think one reason why I had a really bad year in 2015, for example, where I couldn't win, or I had only one win, was I couldn't live up to my own expectations and not to the expectations of my team. I struggled with myself. I think one reason for that was because I had so much success in the beginning, and there was no time to think about it, to realize it, to process it. And I think young riders who make that experience of early success, of a lot of success, they still do not have all the experience that you gain through the years as professional riders. So it would have been a big help for me to maybe have someone there to take me to the side and explain me how I should deal with it, for example. But it was just this crazy life, and we fly from one place to another, and we do races, you win, and everything goes well. But after a while, you realize, okay, it takes so much energy. it can be also really hard, and you start sometimes to struggle. So I think that was a big lesson that I learned in that period.
Pete, for you? Same question, yes.
Yeah, I guess in a similar way, you just don't have time or chance to process any emotions that you're going through. And it's also a sport where, you know, the riders are deemed to be tough and strong, and you don't want to be the guy who is necessarily, is having a problem, or you don't want to be the guy who says, I don't really feel like racing this race, because then, that then impacts you getting selected for the next race, and it's seen as a weakness. And even 2018, I think you did the German tour. Is it just after the Tour de France?
Yeah.
You're in the hotel there, where I remember being in the same hotel, and both maybe going through similar thoughts or emotions, but you just pass each other by, and you don't really, you don't even speak to each other. It's kind of it's quite an isolated existence to a certain extent, unless you have a real close friend. And there's other people going through the same stuff as well. They just keep it locked up. But it's just it's if you're mentally strong and you have the passion, it's fine. But if you have a few doubts or you struggle a little bit, it's a hard lifestyle, and it catches up on you, and you just don't get a chance to process anything that you're going through. And October comes around, you have 1 month off, and you don't think about the bike, and then all of a sudden the roller coaster starts again. And I think that's why you get to the point where you're not even really sure if it's the right or wrong decision. You just know you need a break because something's not right.
And it's funny, isn't it? Even just 6 years ago, we're talking about here, actually showing any signs of weakness or admitting that there's a problem wasn't the done thing, was it? It wasn't what we do in society, let alone elite sport, where you are, as you say, Pete, expected to be that tough.
Yeah, I think it's hard as well because it's, you've worked your whole life for this career, and it was a passion, and well, it still is now. But trying to digest that thought process and also being quite good at something and maybe not wanting to do it, and not other people don't really understand why don't you want to do it, or why don't you want to race, you're really good at it, and even for yourself to try and understand that emotion of this sport that you dreamed about and loved, and had posters on the walls, of Fletcher and Cancellara on my bedroom wall, and it's like, this sport that it was a dream. Now you've got there. It's almost like, okay, maybe it's not what you thought it'd be, and that's really tough to understand and comprehend as well.
Yeah, the expectations aren't there.
And people ask you questions, and it's quite hard to answer them because you don't even know the answer to yourself.
Yeah, for sure. There was obviously headlines about you both being as brilliant as you were, as you still are. Do you feel that you started to believe that hype? Did it ever go to your head? Can you pinpoint moments where you now reflect and look back and say, actually, I did behave in a way that I maybe regret now?
I personally don't think that I have to regret anything in my career. I think I could very well accept my role as a sprinter and everything that you associate with it. Sprinters being not only the tough guys, but we are all a bit different in the sprinters world, but you expect from most sprinters to be maybe sometimes a bit arrogant, egoistic, all this stuff. That's what comes to your mind when you think about a sprinter. I don't think that it has to be like this. I never tried to act like this, but in certain situations, people look at you, especially when you're in your cycling kit, look at you as the sprinter, and they expect all those things, or they judge you before they even talk to you. And I think that role sticks to you, and I think it automatically happens that you somehow also get involved in it, and you like to be, I don't know, sometimes the showman or whatever, and you can't get rid of it. But I think it's just dangerous if it takes you over and you become someone that you actually not are.
Pete, for you as well, do you feel that the hype ever went to your head, or?
I wouldn't say hype, but just the lifestyle of being a professional. It's quite a selfish existence, and you think the world revolves around you, and your racing and your rest and travel and food, and it's only when you stop and you look at what your wife has done for you, or your family, or your parents. But at the time, you just really take it for granted, and can be quite, maybe not. Don't know what the word is, but just quite, like closed, I guess.
But I think, I really believe that you have to be egoistic in a certain way as a professional, as an athlete. You have your goals, you have your ambitions, and normally you're surrounding everyone who is involved, your family, your partner. In a certain way, they also have to accept it and to support it. And you need to find a good balance in it. I mean, you should always, also, of course, also know what they did for you, what they also gave up for you. That's very, very important. But I think only then, if everything around you, is also one team supporting you to be successful, then you can be also successful yourself. So I think it belongs to a professional athlete to be in a certain way also egoistic about his own goals.
Did you develop coping mechanisms, or do you wish you had, perhaps, to help bring you back down to earth? Was there even chance to come back down to earth? Because it's like you said, Pete, it's just a merry-go-round, the cycling calendar. You have 1 month off and then you're back on the bike and back in it.
Yeah, what I always told to myself is that at the end of the year, the victory counter is set to 0, and you have to restart with everything. So it was my way of motivating me to, prepare well during winter training, and to set up a good plan with the team for the goals of the next season. And that helped me a lot, to be honest.
I don't know. I mean, I'm a very different rider to Marcel, so it all just went really fast. The years just flew. They seemed slow at the time, but now looking back, it went with a click of the fingers, and there'd be times, parts of the season where you just have great form and you'd really love your job and love the sport, and there'd be other parts of the season where you just want it to be over.
But what was your thought about? I mean, I'm a sprinter, so every second weekend I had a race where the team was there to support me, so I had to go for a victory. Sometimes I was successful and sometimes not. But for you were not every second weekend in a situation where you had the whole team supporting you for that day. I mean, how did you deal with periods of maybe 1, 2, 3 months without success, or even longer? I don't know.
Yeah, I mean, for me, it was just about doing, like, my success was measured in my job on that day, whatever that may be. It was nice to race for myself at certain times, but I was never that much of a prolific winner where I had the confidence to say, okay, I'm gonna go for the win today. The victories I got were quite just a bit like me, really, a bit sporadic. I just had good legs, and I'd go with a move and it just worked. And then the rest of the time it was quite an inconsistent rider, really. I'd always have good form from June to October, and then have really bad form from February to May. I don't know why.
You both retired relatively young as well. Does that feel strange, seeing cycling continue without you?
No.
I think you probably retired in different ways. Marcel, for you, it was very much, you retired on your terms. And how tough was that decision, though?
No, it's always a big and tough decision to leave something behind that. Until I retired with 31 when I was 31 years old. So 20 years of my life, 20 years of my life were simply cycling. I did nothing else, and to leave that behind you is a I was lucky enough to have the time in 2019 from April to until August to take time for myself to think about it. What do I want? I was actually, when I stopped my contract with Katusha Alpecin in spring 2019, I thought my immediate reaction was I need to go back and I want to stay and be a professional cyclist. But then I thought, okay, what else could be important to me in my life, and what else do I want to experience? And I came to the conclusion that it was not only being a professional cyclist, but that there would be more that I want to see, and that's a very privileged situation to have. Yeah.
Pete, for you, how tough was the decision to walk away from the sport?
It was very different to Marcel in the terms of it was like I'd say it was probably 3 years of building up to that point. It was, like I said, with the way my form was, I always struggled in the April period of the year. I have no idea why. And each year it got more and more difficult to deal with that period of the season. I'd always get through it, and I retired so many times in my head without actually retiring. But I'd always pick up form again and finish the season strong. Then it would be the off season, and then it would happen again. And it was probably the fourth time that I went through this in April. I'd just go down I live about 800 meters from the beach, and I'd just go down to the beach and just look out at sea, and just 2 hours would just pass like that. And I was like, yeah, I can't do this again, and I can't go through this again for another year. And yeah, it was quite difficult because I didn't really know why I was stopping, but I knew it was the right thing to do. And I find it hard to watch racing, especially in the periods of the season that you enjoyed on TV, because I still have that kind of, I don't know if it'll ever go. You have that feeling that, you must have it a little bit.
Did I miss out on something? Or
no, just that when you watch it on TV, that races that you enjoyed or that you got a lot out from, that you'd like to be there or not? Were you completely closed?
No, for example, when I saw Kev this year winning at the Tour, I was really happy for him, and I also thought, it's so nice to win a Tour de France stage in a sprint and to dominate the race like he did this year. But then on the other hand, and probably 1 second later, I also think I also know what it takes to get there and how hard it can be, and that was also part of the reason why I wanted to stop and do something else. So I'm completely fine. I'm very happy for everyone who's still successful, and I can watch it as a cycling fan now.
That's just it. We see that 1 second of glory in the limelight. We don't see the hours and hours in the dark, wet, cold that you guys suffer through. Pete, you've touched on it there, so I'm going to pick up on it. Probably quite a deep question, but I did warn you backstage there would be. Do you feel that you've had closure on your career?
I feel this year I'm getting really close to the point where I've got closure with where I'm at in life. Doesn't mean that I've got closure from the sport, but I've got to the point where I'm happy with it. It's been a 3-year journey process, I'd say, of really just understanding my relationship with the bike, what it was, what it is now, who I am as a person, not a bike rider, because your whole identity from the age of 12 till when we retired is just Pete the cyclist, and understanding who you are, putting things like, really, it was such a massive reality check, actually, stopping cycling, the real world. You quickly realise that you're not that good at a lot of stuff. That was the biggest shock. No qualifications. I do the punditry stuff with ITV, which was, I've done that for 3 years now. The first year was really hard, actually, but I felt like I had to do it to get my foot in the door. And I couldn't really let the opportunity pass. But going back to the Tour de France in 2019, only 3 months after stopping, was really, really strange. Not being a rider and being on the other side of the fence, it was just really awkward. But this year I finally felt like comfortable with what I was doing and where I'm at with my life. So it's just a process. It's when you've done something, when you've dedicated your life to a sport or a job or whatever it is, and you've done it religiously for 20 plus years. It's going to be a journey and a process to adapting to a different way of life.
It's hard to let go, isn't it? Marcel, when you retired, you obviously spoke out about the battles you had with your own mental health, taking time away from the sport. How do you reflect on your mental health now and your mental health back then as well?
I'm perfectly fine now. I'm enjoying my life especially after pro cycling. So I've recently also wrote a book which is unfortunately only available in Germany for now, but I've tried to explain it a little bit, how it was for me. So mental health is a big word, and I'm always a bit careful with in which way I want to use it, because there certainly are people who were or are way more affected than I was, even in my really difficult times. But I think Pete said it already in a really good way. You sometimes lose your identity. You get lost in the sport, and in 2015 and 18, I really struggled with myself, especially 15, because when I had until then 4 really successful years, no break, no time for myself, and I was only Marcel Kittel, the cyclist, the sprinter, the successful guy, but I didn't know anymore who I was at home. When you close the door and it becomes really quiet. And that made me very unhappy, and I also felt I was really, really exhausted physically, but also mentally in the winter of 2014. So the whole preparation was already getting really difficult for me, and I sort of got deeper and deeper in that hole, and I realized I need to reach out for help. I started to work with a sports psychologist to actually find the answers to those questions, and that was a very good process for me, because I learned a big lesson about myself. I got a lot of experience, and it also in the end made me stronger for the years after. I realized I need change. I need to leave my team where I was in 2015, and after that I went to Team Quickstep and found a new surrounding, new motivation, and that helped me very much. And I always like to look at it like maybe a very early midlife crisis, because this period of your life as a pro cyclist is so intense that I came to that point maybe quite early. I had to ask myself, what do I want for the future? And since then, since it happened to me, I tried to live very consciously. I tried to enjoy the success. I was really standing on the podium, for example, in the Tour in 2017 especially, and trying to enjoy every second of that 3 seconds that you have there, actually like it would never happen again to me, and it didn't happen again after that anymore. So it was a good thing to do.
Yeah, that's lovely. It's good to hear that now you're in that place, and that you can look back and realise the sort of the lessons you've learned over your period in the sport. Looking back, would you have done anything differently, knowing what you know now? I would have tried to enjoy everything as much as possible from the beginning, because especially the first 2-3 years of my career, you go, like I said, from one place to the next. You're successful, everything is goes super fast, and you do not take the time for yourself to try to understand how unique it is, winning a Tour de France stage, winning, other big races in the sport. And it feels like normal, but it's not normal at all. And I think that understanding makes it also maybe easier to leave the sport, knowing, okay, I'm leaving a very special time behind, and I have to prepare for something more normal. No crazy emotional roller coasters, and just a more regular life, which is also very nice when you're prepared for it. Pete, for you, same question.
Yeah, very similar. It's I'd probably say you take it for granted. At the time, you don't realise. I think because the trajectory is so gradual to arriving, well, for you at the Tour de France, winning Tour de France stages, you've worked for it from, you're not just a person on the street and then you win a Tour de France stage. You've under 14, under 16, junior, under 23, then you arrive at this Tour de France, and it feels very, it's like a club race almost, And I think that, but for me, that's the dangerous part, though, is the complacent. If you get complacent and take it for granted, and I definitely I was definitely complacent, and I definitely took just what we were doing for granted. Really, never really, like you said, just took time to sort of digest what we were doing and what we were achieving on the bike, and that's probably my only regret. If I could give myself a bit of advice, I'd just say, just take time, take stock, look at what you're doing, maybe speak to more people. Just don't be so in the zone and serious, and just relax, enjoy it, appreciate what you're doing, and appreciate what the bike has given you and the opportunities it's gave you.
I have a good quote from Brian Holm, the sports director on Quickstep. He said once to me, once you start to be successful and win races, you think of yourself that you're a rocket scientist and really smart. But once that success is gone, you realize it's not like that. As a cyclist, you are obviously very good at what you do. But I think it's good to keep both feet down to earth and realize that, that is a good way to go through life, instead of thinking that you will always be at the top, because fame is only temporary.
So that's the advice you'd give to yourselves. We're seeing younger and younger riders coming into the sport and shooting to the very top of the sport fast. What advice would you give younger athletes now?
I'm just really intrigued to how long they can keep the level for. If you're already at that level at 19, 20, unless your passion and motivation is consistently there, but if you get the results that they're getting and they stop at 30, then what can you say? It's just they're just doing it the opposite way around. So advice, I don't know. They're too good for me to. I can't sit here and give them advice. I'd probably say do the opposite of what I do. But it's tough, isn't it? Because they have so much information now as well, and juniors, and everything's there. It's all the information, all the training. They know exactly what the pros are doing. I think that's really brought the sport forward in terms of how good they are at a young age. But what can you say? Yeah,
I think for me my advice would be to, obviously some guys are really young and very good, like Evenepoel at the moment, or Van der Poel. And I think it's important to keep that balance between, being egoistic enough to keep that level and fight for your own ambition as well, to be successful also as a team, but also as a rider. On the other side, that you realize that there will come an end to it, and what comes afterwards, because you can't avoid that, even if you ride until you're 40 years old. I think it's good to be aware that both things have to be in balance during your career, and then you will be, I think, for a long time successful.
I feel like it's a real father thing to say, what you'd say to your kid, what you're going to do after cycling, and you laugh it off, don't you? You go, oh, I don't know, I'll figure it out. But it's so important to have that plan, because it comes around fast, and then all of a sudden you have no idea what you're going to do. But even to tell Evenepoel now, what's your plan after your career, he wouldn't care, would he?
Probably not, no, because I think when he retires, he probably won the Tour de France 8 times, and
he'll be here in 10 years.
Yeah, probably. Do you feel the sport's evolved and is now in a better place to offer riders the kind of support perhaps you would have benefited from at a young age, sort of in your early 20s? Do you think the sport now is a safer place to have those more open conversations?
Yes and no. Yes, because I do believe that enough riders started to speak up about it, and it's the discussion about it is there. But I think in reality, I'm not sure if it's really consciously implemented in every team's plan, and if every team management is aware of the fact that you can push a young athlete very far, and not making him aware that there is also life after, or that they need to keep everything in balance with their private life as well. I could imagine that it would be also maybe sometimes not in the interest of a team, because as long as a rider is successful, why never change a winning system? So I think you consistently need to push for it and talk about it and make people aware of it, especially the riders.
I think it's tough because I think a lot of teams now are doing it just to tick a box. So they'll have a sports psychologist, but if a rider has an issue or they're struggling, they'll just see them as a weakness, and they might try and help, but he'll have a bit of a black mark against them, So, but it's a tough conversation because at the end of the day, it is elite sport, and you have to be mentally strong, and it's a tough game. And if you're not quite there mentally, then you're not going to be winning races. You're not going to be able to do your job. At the same time, there should be support, but it is elite sport we're talking about. So I think if the support's there and the teams are doing enough to help riders who are struggling, then that's all you can really ask for.
Yeah, Marcel?
Yeah, I do believe it's a selection that also happens within the pro world. If you can't keep up, you might have to leave the team. But I also believe that there is a chance actually there for the teams as well, because putting more effort into supporting not only the weaker riders that need more support, but the whole team in general brings the whole team also forward and gives the team also an opportunity to have a very talented rider on a top level. If you give him the necessary support that he needs, that might be a bit more work, but I think you can be almost certain that it will pay off.
Yeah, we're using the word weak, aren't we? But actually, I think admitting you have a problem is probably one of the bravest things you can do, isn't it? It actually shows real mental fortitude and strength.
Yeah, absolutely.
Just a word then from both of you on your thoughts on this generation of riders that we're seeing coming through. We touched on it in the advice that you'd give them. Pete, for you, just do the opposite of what you're doing. But Pogacar, Evenepoel, Mathieu van der Poel, Wout van Aert, these sensational riders who are coming through and are at the top of their game, and they have targets on their back at every race, and the expectation is there. What are your thoughts on this generation?
I feel they're definitely more educated on and aware of stress, pressure, mental health. When we were their age, it wasn't really a thing. It was just, anxiety was just you were really worried, or if you were stressed, you didn't even know it was stress. You were just in a mood. But I feel like they're definitely. You can even tell from their interviews. They're really well. They've done a lot of work, I would say, in the sports psychology area, and you can just even the dialogue they use. You can see it's a massive part of their training, I believe. And then only time will tell how they deal with the pressure and the expectation. But they all seem mentally really strong. But I just think that's down to the awareness.
Tadej Pogacar, for example, he's won 2 Tour de France before the age of 23. It's ridiculous, isn't it?
It's almost, I can understand how you can have so much talent, but also look at Wout van Aert. He's able to sprint, he's able to climb, he's able to be a great time trialist. I was good at sprinting only. So, but it's really amazing to see those guys. They're great for the sport, and they're certainly a good role model also for younger guys to see what you can achieve. Of course, if you have enough talent, first of all. But I think also when you are, in the right team, for example, when I'm talking about Wout van Aert, I really believe, and that's I think what you mean also with all the support that they get already now to be able to deal with all that. They're in this team, for example, very well supported. So yeah, that's great to see.
I don't think many riders can say they can win up Ventoux and then on the Champs-Élysées in one race, can they? It was nuts. It was ridiculous. Okay, what's next for both of you? Pete, what are you up to at the moment? Still riding a bike. Everyone here, when you arrived yesterday, remarked on how lean you're looking. And we went riding yesterday morning, didn't we? We did a shoot in London.
We did a little photo shoot.
We did a little photo shoot, we did. And your Tour de France calves came out, didn't they? One of the photos, we zoomed in. It was popping out.
Briefly. I did
made a brief appearance.
Yeah, I did put some moisturiser on the legs. I've got 4 kids at home, so they keep me busy. I just really enjoying family time and just taking it day by day. It's nice to be in a place to enjoy life again and set some new goals for the years to come. And just enjoy it.
You are training hard as well, aren't you? You're doing triathlons too.
No, I would mean that was a bit of a flash in the pan, to be honest.
You've done a triathlon, shall we
yeah,
say?
I've done a few triathlons, but I like to have something like a goal or a target. It keeps me focused. Otherwise, I become lazy. Even if it's just a local event or whatever it is. I've entered the Manchester Marathon next year. So, I just like to have something just to motivate me to train, because I know if I train, I feel better. Where if I don't have that focus, then I become lazy and don't do anything. So, that's why.
Do you have a target time for the marathon? I'm sure you do.
I'd like to go below 3:40.
I think you'll...
No, 2:40.
Just the hour difference there.
Oh, yeah.
2:40. That is ridiculous. Marcel, any marathons for you?
No, I'm way too heavy. I'm not a runner. That's why I became a cyclist in the first place. No, it's I'm still a bit on the bike and enjoying riding my bike. I'm also enjoying my family life. I only have 2 kids, so it's a bit of an easier life, I guess. Besides that, I started to a few years ago to go back to university, study, and also I'm still enjoying doing jobs in the cycling world with actually all different kind of things. I'm at some events, working with my partners together on German television, commentating a few races. So it's nice to keep a connection to the sport like that.
Absolutely, it's good to have you both here. Coming up next, we have Omar De Felice, Ian Boswell and Amity Rockwell with Juan Antonio Fletcher. But for now, thank you so much, Marcel Kittel and Pete Kennaugh.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Well done.